I have to be honest with you, I really struggled with what to preach about today because there's so much going on in those three readings. But when I read the opening prayer, it kind of brought it all together. O God, who founded all the commands of your sacred law upon love of you and of our neighbor. When we were in seminary, they taught us to look at the Bible through different lenses. And one of the lenses that we look at the Bible most clearly through is the lens of God's love. You see that reading about the workers in the vineyard. These guys are hired early in the morning, probably the crack of dawn, and they negotiate a salary. Okay, I'll work the whole day long till sunset for $100. Okay, that's fair. Okay, go to work. Comes out at 10 o'clock and says, oh, you're not working yet. Come on, come to work. I'll pay you what's fair. And he does it again at dinner time. And then at 5 o'clock, he comes out and he sees these three guys standing there like, what are you doing? Why aren't you working? Nobody will hire us. Well, come to work for me and I'll pay you what's fair. He tells his servant, pay them all a full day's wages, no matter how many hours they work, but start with the first group. Brings the first group that only worked an hour, pays them a full day's wages, and they're excited. But not as excited as the people that started early in the morning because they think, wow, if they got the full day's wages, think of what we're going to get. We're going to be bust with money. But when he gets to them, he pays them a full day's wages, and they say, what are you doing? We sweated out in the hot sun all day long, and you only gave us this amount of money? Those guys came here an hour ago, and you paid them a full day's wages, the same as us. And the owner looks at them and he says, did I cheat you? Didn't you agree that that's what you would work for? You thought it was fair this morning. What if I intend to be generous with the people that are working for me that only worked an hour? Is that any business of yours? It's my money. Doesn't seem fair, does it? I was at Mass last night and a guy walked out and he said, I was in a union my whole life long and that would never have happened. But you have to think about it through the eyes of God, and sometimes you have to read between the lines. What if these three guys that are standing on the corner there looking, desperately hoping for a job, had spent the whole day going from town to town desperately looking for work, and they finally said, well, let's go here. Maybe by some miracle they'll give us a couple hours work and we'll at least be able to feed our kids for the day. And maybe they had 3 or 4 or 5, 6 kids and they were hungry, and maybe the landowner knew that, and he said, come on, come to work. And when he found out how many kids they had, he said, just give them a whole day's wages. I don't care. I don't need the money. Isn't it a little bit easier? You're looking at it through the lens of God's love to see that it might not be fair, but it's just. Sometimes we have to recognize what it says in the first reading. Our ways are not God's ways, but maybe they should be. I told a story on September 11th about a guy who was in New York City. He was from Egypt. He'd been in the United States for about 4 or 5 years, and his dream was to come to America and start his own little business. And he started a little coffee shop. It's called a hookah bar, open 24 hours a day, where people could just come and talk, kind of like McDonald's in Baden. And 4 days after 9/11 hit, 4 guys came in the middle of the night and trashed the store, broke everything, broke all the mirrors on the wall, broke all the plates, did everything. He gets a phone call, 3 o'clock in the morning. Mr. Salama, you got to come here. Your store's been destroyed. So he comes at 4 o'clock in the morning, and somebody had called the police, and these 4 guys were there handcuffed. The cop said to him, are you going to press charges? And he said, no. What? Look what they did to your store, your dream. He said, no, I want to talk to them for a moment, but then you can let them go. And he walked up to them and he said, I know you are angry. I know why you did this. I am angry too. I came here, like maybe your grandparents, to come and build a life for myself, get the American dream, and I just had it. And I see these people that look like me destroy these buildings and destroy so many lives. I'm angry just like you. But I don't want them to punish you because I understand your anger, and the anger must end right here. So go home. And they let them go. An hour later, 4 o'clock in the morning, they showed up. This time not with baseball bats, but with brooms and dustpans, and they helped clean up that store. That's God's love and the effects of that love. I told this story to two friends of mine in the parking lot of Costco last night. I haven't seen them in a long time. They're both atheists. They were born in the Soviet Union, and they were taught there is no God. And I told them that story, and the husband said, "It doesn't make sense to me." That he would just let them go after they destroyed his store. And his wife looked at me and said, "Wouldn't it be nice if more people thought that way?" Wow. I look at our country and I'm terrified because all I see on TV is fighting. It's like we're in the middle of a bad divorce. Worst movie I've ever seen was War of the Roses. It's a story about this really ugly divorce, and at the end of the movie, the husband and wife are fighting up on the balcony, and they fall down and are crushed on the floor, and the marble floor, and the husband, as a sign of reconciliation, reaches out to the wife to grab her hand, and she bats his hand away, and then they both die. It's awful. What an ending to a movie. It's not like a Disney movie. But our country's like that. We have these people who are battling and saying, instead of saying, here's what I plan to do with the country and here's how I'm going to do it, it's all about, do you know what he did? He's a loser. Do you know what he did? He did this. He didn't do this. He promised to do. All we do is fight. Do people realize that when this is all over, all the elections are over, we have a country to run? It's like a bad divorce, and they're just fighting and sniping at one another instead of looking at things about how can we make this country better, instead of focusing on the fact we're in the middle of a pandemic, in the middle of a great recession. How about forgetting about whether you're Republican or Democrat and remembering that you're Americans? How about remembering that you're Christians? How about if we remember that we're Catholics and begin to be able to talk about issues without fighting with one another, without walking out of Mass? How about if we remember that we have to look at all of these things through the lens of God's love? And only if we can do that will we ever be once again one nation under God.